Hello and welcome to this video on abilities. This is an introductory video. This is a very basic tutorial on how we create abilities in Occamise and what they're used for. So abilities are effectively the execution of a function, whether it be within the Occamise platform itself or with a third-party software of some type. So agents will intuitively execute abilities during a conversation based on the definition of the ability itself, and they do so in order to obviously achieve things, actually execute functions to create things or whatever it may be, but possibly as well to retrieve context to help them in fulfilling their role. So let's have a look at how we create an ability. So we're going to go to Add Ability, and we'll create a new one just to sort of illustrate how it works. So what we'll do is we'll create an action item. Now you don't necessarily know what an action item is, but you will in a minute. So on our dashboard we have this concept of action items. It's just a way for an agent to notify a user within the platform that there's something that needs to be actioned, basically. And then because an action item has a status of acknowledged or completed, you can monitor that certain activities have been completed based on that. To start, we created the action item, we gave it a name, and so by default the system will generate this sort of description as to when the agent should execute it. And by default, the setting for when an agent should consider executing an ability is always at any point in the conversation. So at any point in the conversation just means, hey, agent, if you think we should be executing this ability and all the conditions for doing that have been met, you go ahead and do it. And so one of the main conditions of executing an ability is, of course, this description. And by default, it just says when the user or agent would like to create an action item. But you can change this to whatever you want. So you could say that an action item should be created whenever the user says a particular word, if you wanted to. And whenever the agent sees a user mention that word, it'll execute the ability. But this is great by default. You can provide some additional instructions here if you want, and you can toggle this requires confirmation, which just adds an extra layer on top. So that the agent will confirm it before executing. And there are some advanced options and things which we're not going to go into in this video. So let's create the step. Again, I'm not going to explain all of these different services and all the functions that exist under them. I'm going to go straight to the one that I know contains our function for creating an action item, which is the Occamise service. It's one of our internal services. So there's a lot of capability within our platform out of the box without integrating with any third-party tools, right? So we have the Occamise API, which has a whole heap of functions. We have Twilio SMS, Twilio Voice, web browsing, custom HTTP requests, and Occamise, and each of those has a bunch of different functions that you can utilize straight out of the box. The Occamise service has the create action item, so we're going to use that. And now we see the parameters that this function needs when it's going to be executed. So it needs content. So what's the content or the text of the action item? What conversation is it related to, which is identified through what we call a chat session ID. And also you can assign it to an individual user within your organization, or you can just assign it to everyone by leaving this option blank. So how do we set these parameter values in Occamise? It's all AI prompting, just like everything else. Super simple. You don't need to think or do anything complex. Okay, so there's two options. We can set the content of an action item either through an AI generated value or through a static value. Static is what you would imagine. If I type do something, this text is going to be the text of the action item, and it will always be that, which would be a bit silly for an ability like this. So you want to make that AI generated, and you can leave the additional instructions empty if you want. The agent will know from the user's conversation what they want this content to be, and if it doesn't, it'll certainly ask that before it goes and tries to run this ability. And it knows that this parameter contains the content of the action item, and it's a string. So this is enough for the agent to generate a value by itself, but you can also provide additional instructions on top. So for example, if you wanted every action item to start with action item, for example, you could direct the agent to do that. So you could say the text content of the action item prepended with action item, for example. And I'll leave that like it is just to illustrate that that's what would happen. So the chat session ID, well, we always want it to be associated with this conversation, and so we have some ability variables that you can use for that, and you can find out which ones are available through this little I button. So click on that. We want this chat session ID, so I'm going to copy that. Come over here, and to use one of these variables, you just surround it with double curly brackets, and it will replace this whole value with the actual value. And with the last one here, also going to set it to static and leave it empty so that all users on this in this organization will see that action item. Okay, so the only parameter the agent is responsible for here is the content of the action item. All right, so let's save changes on that. We have this all saved, I think, as well. I'll save it again. Now we're going to go give that to a little test agent that I created. This test agent's simply been told to do whatever it's asked to do. And so let us give it the ability to create an action item, save changes, and let's come over and test it. So to have a conversation with an agent, the way I like to do it is to come over to channels and click on this start web chat. All right, so what do we want to do? We want to create an action item. Please create a new action item. Go shopping. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter on that. Now the agent has seen the request from the user. It's clearly asking for an action item to be created. It knows it has an ability to create an action item, and it knows how it should populate the content, and so it's gone ahead and created that action item. So if we come over to our dashboard now, and I hit refresh, we have action item : go shopping, which is exactly what I asked it to do, always prepending with the words action item and then the content that the user specified. So that's a quick introduction to how easy it is to use all of the abilities in Occamise, and hopefully that was helpful, and look out for some of our other videos for much more complicated use cases. Cheers.